Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome, welcome. I hope everybody's doing great. Anybody that's in here so far? Let's see. Pull my chat up. I'm going to get all this stuff up and going here. So, welcome to the Studio Q show. Not sure why I am not in control here. Hey, good morning. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So we're a little early, a couple, 3 minutes early. So we'll give people a chance to get in. This is going to be oil printing, Rawlins oil printing, part 3, a little technical overview on how to ink prints up, how to work with them, how to, actually going to show some mistakes. Couple of things that might be interesting. We'll see if anybody comes in and joins us. Like I said, we're a little early yet, so we're not going to get too rambunctious at this point in time. We'll see what happens here. Just make sure everybody can. I'm not sure why. I don't think you need a password to get in, so we're gonna hold out and see. So give us a few moments and we'll get going here. I hope everybody's doing good, everybody's safe. All the craziness is not getting to your head too bad, I hope. We'll see, I guess, at the end of the day, we'll see how long this madness lasts. But in the meantime, we can try to stay safe and be reasonable about our lives, I guess. So I see Jan's joined us. As we come in here, we're still a couple of minutes early yet. I usually don't jump in right until the very end, but we'll just be patient. I just put a little note out there on Facebook. Didn't advertise this one as much, but if you've been following the oil printing process, you'll probably end up coming in. So once we get, I'm going to go ahead and start my video here. Let me just see if I can jump over there. Screen share. Oh yeah, no problem there. One of these days I may try to do a GoPro, connect a GoPro through my iPhone and see if that works if that works or if that's efficient to make these videos with. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm pre-recording the work with the GoPro, dropping the audio out, running it on here, and then just doing the voiceover. Tends to work a little bit better. We'll see what happens. But anyway, we can, as we kind of wait around and have some people jump in here, the process has been fairly straightforward. We didn't cover negatives in this particular series. What I did is I jumped right to making gelatin, preparing your paper, pouring your gelatin. Then the next part, last time we sensitized the gelatin, we put the negative on, exposed the image, cleared the dichromate out of the gelatin, and now we're swelling the paper or the print, swelling the gelatin, not the paper, swelling the print, the gelatin on the print that has it's the matrix as we call it, the image that's exposed. If you recall, what happens when you have gelatin on a piece of paper and you put dichromate on it, in this case potassium dichromate, about a 5% solution, then you put a negative, let it dry, you put a negative on top of that, the light that penetrates in your clear or void areas will come through and hit that dichromated gelatin, and it will harden that gelatin. The highlights in your negative will prevent the light from striking that gelatin, that dichromated gelatin, and those areas will remain soft and they will swell with water. So the idea is once you pull that print, you clear it, you pull it out of your contact printer, clear the dichromate out of it, all you have left now is gelatin, hardened gelatin, softer gelatin, and soft gelatin. Stuff that will not swell, stuff that will swell just a little, and midtones, and then stuff that will swell completely, your highlights. So when you swell it up, and that's what you're going to see today, when you swell it up and then you run an ink roller or take a brush to it, what happens is that ink is repelled from the highlight areas, the wet, swollen part. Ink, oil and water kind of concept is what they say. It'll repel the ink away from the highlights and absorb into the shadows and some of the midtones. So this is a really difficult video to do, just for the simple fact that this inking up process is so variable. It's like, it's even more extreme than if you tone, or how much exposure you put on a print, or if you in the gelatin, silver gelatin world, if you're in an enlarger, how much you dodge and burn. This is complete control over the print. So if you want a fairly straight looking photograph, you can use a Yupo paper and roll it out a certain way, and you'll have a pretty straight looking photograph. If you want a more pictorialist kind of look and feel, you use kind of a watercolor paper, brush it, roll it a certain way, vignette it. You're going to see today the ones that I did. I'm going to show you some mistakes too. The ones that I did I went kind of dark and moody. Like I said, I've been working on this ghost dance stuff and printing out a series of these images. I have 52 negatives from the ghost dance work, and I'm going to print about 20 of those. I'm going to pick the ones that I feel are most interesting visually and story-wise, and I'm going to make oil prints of those. So I'm going to jump over here, and let's look at this video. I think everybody can see. Yes.
You might want to blast out your link. I think the only link I found for this for today was in your announcement video. I didn't see a link for this this cast anywhere else. So you might want to blast it out a couple times.
I appreciate that. I just did a little Facebook Live piece.
You just might have people freaking out, because I know I was scrambling to try to find out what the link was.
Oh,
but you might want to blast it a couple more times and then kind of tap dance.
Yeah, I put it out on Facebook on all my social media. So I hope. I
didn't see that for some reason.
Huh? Yeah,
I saw it only on the link of your little blast video you did about 10 minutes ago.
Oh, yeah, that's what I did.
That might be why we're a little light. So you might want to blast it again. And
yeah. Well, hold on then. Okay, it's only 5 after, so we got a minute here. Let me jump over and see if I can do that. That's a good point. I appreciate that. Although I am recording it and it'll go up on Facebook or YouTube, but yeah, let me go over here and push this out here. So yeah, it's out there. Let's do that again. Oh, it's okay. We'll see what happens here. Let's see. We'll go that route. Yeah, I think people, live 12 minutes ago, and there's the link. So I hope people see that. I don't know. I use a link from the blog. There you go, Michelle. Yeah, and that's another good way to get there too. I mean, I try to do them Wednesdays and Saturdays at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. So I hope people, if they're interested in watching them, they can come in and join us.
But you know what I'm talking about, right? Usually you put the link out way in advance, but I knew you were doing it this morning. It's just that I didn't have that Zoom link. I didn't know where to click. And
Oh,
that might
gotcha.
be why we're a little light today.
It's on Facebook now. So yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see. Let's see if people come in. You're right. I've been kind of preoccupied. I've been busy. I'm selling my house. So we've had a few showings this last weekend, you know, the holiday or whatever. People didn't respond. We had a snowstorm on Sunday. So we're selling our house, and we've been a little bit preoccupied with trying to get that up and going. But well, it's a crazy time. I don't know. I picked some bad timing to try to sell my house. My plan is right now, or our plan, my wife and I, we're trying to get the house sold. We've got our property in central western Colorado here. We're up in the mountains. We've got 12 acres up there. We started a homestead. We got our plot. We got our lot leveled and our driveway done. We got our water well in. We got our septic system laid out, which is going to cost more than a small vehicle to do. And then we got our building, our structure. I'm going to do a 30 by 80 by 20 foot tall metal building. Half of it's going to be our home, and half of it's going to be a photo studio, a Northlit studio, a Northlight studio, my blacksmith and bladesmith working shop, and then a small garage. And I've got all the contractors lined out. I got my concrete guy. I got the building materials. I got the engineer and architect in Colorado Springs doing my drawings right now. I've got everything laid out, and this coronavirus hits. And we just put our house up the 1st of April, so 2 weeks ago. And had a lot of response. We get views on it every day and people saving it. And I think that everybody's kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. The big problem with for us is that this homestead build, moving to the mountains, we're doing it all cash. So I'm not taking any debt on. So the sale of this home is really important to be able to accomplish that down there. And now I'm a little bit worried, and I'm not really sure what's going to happen at this point. So I need to stay positive, but I need to be realistic about it, and hope that the right buyer comes along. I really didn't want to sell until May because we're not going to leave until June. But if things don't start improving in May, I'm really going to get nervous. But that's kind of where we're at on our move. But I still fantasize and dream about my studio in the mountains. It's the first time in my life that I'm actually going to have a north light studio. I'm not going to use any artificial light up there at all. My darkroom's going to be practically the same that I have here behind me. And my bladesmith and blacksmith shop's going to be similar to what I have now to make knives and do blacksmith work and things like that. That's what I like to do as well. And so our plan is to have 2 retreats a year up there once we get built out. We're going to have a nice big greenhouse. We're going to invite people up twice a year, probably in the spring and the fall, or the summer, first of the summer and the last of the summer maybe. And spend a week and learn photography, do blacksmithing or bladesmithing work, sorry about that, or do a just digital detox, right? Get off the grid, get off the grid, get away from screens, do all that stuff, live in the mountains for a week. We're going to have nice little accommodations, or a little mezzanine floor above the studio people can stay in. So that's the plan. But now this, the infamous coronavirus has taken us over. I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll see. That's the plan. Fingers crossed. If we sell the house next month, boom, we're on board. And if I don't have to lower the price too much, we're on board. We're going to make it happen. So June we'll be up there. We'll build through the end of the summer. In August, we should be dried in. Take over winter time, build out the inside. So next spring, we'll be getting going and seeing what's happening. If the world is still with us, as Michael Stipe says, it's the end of the world as we know it, right? Sometimes it feels that way, but anyway, we're going to say that is good. I'm going to jump over, and anybody that's not here is going to have to catch up with us. So here it is. I'm going to run you guys through the part 3. And again, this is taking from the negative that you already have, a wet collodion negative, a film negative, whatever you want to do, a digital negative, it doesn't matter. And we started at part 1 where we did the paper, we made the gelatin, we poured the paper, we let that dry for a day. We came back and did part 2 where we sensitized the paper, dried it, put our negative on it, exposed it, cleared it with the EDTA or bisulfite, whatever you want to use, sodium sulfite, whatever you want to use, or just water. Cleared the print, let it dry for a day. Now we're back to where we're going to swell it. So this is the third day, or the third part. And we're in the dark room, and I'm going to show you just a couple of different ones. I've been doing a lot of them. You'll see that portrait there as well too. So what I say is swell the print. Step 1, swell the prints, 21 degrees Celsius, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 20, 30 minutes. You have to kind of be careful with this. I don't know why my little thing isn't going away there. You have to be careful with this because you don't want to go too long or too hot of water. Both will create problems for you. The problems will be you'll overswell the gelatin. And you know you've overswelled the gelatin when it gets like the fingertips after you've been in a swimming pool or water for 3 or 4 hours. You start getting wrinkly. It gets really weird. So don't overswell your gelatin, but swell it enough so you get a good relief. You notice the prints are cleared. The Yupo paper clears a lot more than the watercolor paper. The next step you want to do is prepare your ink. I use a sheet of glass, just blue tape down on my table. I use the lithographic dark brown 1903 from the Chemical Ink Graphic and Ink Supply. I use about, that much right there. Put it out on the glass. Take my brayer here. Brayer is just basically an ink roller, and spread that ink out. You'll see it. If the table shakes, I apologize for the video, but maybe not so bad. I spread that ink out, spread it around. If there's any dried chunks in it or pieces in it, like probably right there, yeah, I do. I grab that one out. Clean that ink out. And I mix colors up sometimes too. I might put a little black in here, or maybe not. But here's the interesting thing. I'm going to show you some mistakes that I made as I go through this. You'll kind of see. Here's my high density roller. I just get these at a big box store. They're just little 4-inch white high density foam rollers that are used for painting, I think. And I'm just going to put a little ink on there. I'm going to make sure the roller is clean. I have a little piece of something on there. So you can use these 3 or 4 times, 5 times. Sometimes it just depends. You want to get a nice even coat. And you'll see I have a piece of paper next to me as well too that I roll it out on.
Quinn, if we have questions, do you want us to hit now or wait?
Yeah, no, shoot.
How often are you? I was hoping you can keep that on the screen. How often are you making prints a week or a month that you're keeping everything kind of wet underneath the plastic wrap?
I have been, yeah, that's a great question. I don't know what happened to my video. I've had this plastic wrap and the ink under it for 6 months, maybe longer. I mean, this lithographic ink, as you know, John, takes a week to dry. In fact, the dark chalk or the light brown or the crayon brown is what it's called, or crayon black. Can't remember the number on it. It takes almost a month to dry on the prints, right? So if you keep them covered up, and I keep everything wrapped in the shrink wrap plastic, so my rollers, my brush, everything like that, maybe, I've been doing this 3 or 4 years, I guess now. Maybe every 6 or 8 months, if I start to see problems, I'll let it dry and scrape it all off, or I'll just scrape off this. I can take a razor blade to that glass and clean that off pretty much down to the glass if I have any dried ink on it. The biggest problem I have are bits drying and having those roll into the ink or into the print. And that's not even a big deal either.
How about the roller and the stag's foot brush? How often are you replacing the roller cover, and how often are you cleaning your brush?
Yeah, I'm doing the roller. Like I said, probably about every. I want to say every. Let me pause this here. Sorry. I'm going to say every 5 prints or so, 5 or 6 prints, you know, the small ones. And again, it just depends. In the summertime, it's a lot less. Over the winter, I can probably get 5 or 6 prints out of one of those high density little rollers. And then buy them in 4 or 5 packs. And now I just got some new ones. They're a little softer. I'll show them to you. I haven't tried these small. Let me grab one and show you. They're not high density, but I've actually started using. Started using these to pull highlights off. These little guys. I just got them on Amazon for $3 or $4 for. I think I got 12 of these, something like that, and they're great. Like if you know, there's so many ways to do this. I roll the first coat on, and you lay everything over. Even the swelled parts will take the ink, and then as you roll, and the ink starts resisting, you pull the ink off. And this is what I use to kind of clear the highlights. I don't know if I have it in this video, but you'll see what I mean here. So yeah, great question. Keep your ink. Don't let your inks dry out. Don't let your rollers dry out. Don't let your brush heads dry out. Your little wet step wedges, whatever you're using, and clean them every so often. I've only cleaned these probably in 3 or 4 years. I've only cleaned the brush maybe twice with hot. The first time I tried it, I used, I think I used denatured turpentine, and it kind of frayed the brush a little bit. And then the second time I just used hot water and soap, and it seemed to work better. So yeah, everybody's a little different. You'll figure out how you want to do it. And so here we are. I have a little blank spot in here. So the ink is on that high density roller. Get a little bit of ink on there. See if I can expand this, enter full screen. There we go. Get a little ink on there. And then the paper towel's wet, so I just check it to see if I have, just so I don't have excess ink on that roller, and I don't. And you see my print out there already, but here we go. Sorry about the blank. This is a countdown to not a very good video editor here. So here's my little 6x6. I sped this up because this gets so long and the video is already long enough. So I'm just dabbing off. This just came out of the swelling, the 30-minute swelling. So I'm just dabbing it off, dabbing the excess water off. Very light brush roller strokes. Now here's the first print that's a mistake. I mean, the print's coming in just fine, but here's the first mistake. Do you guys see it? I'm going to pause this. If you look, I'm going to point this out too. If you look, I don't know, can you see my mouse? Probably not. If you look right in the center of the print, you see that white spot? That's where I brushed too long with the dichromate. I went too long, the gelatin got soft, and I brushed it off. So I want to show you guys what this looks like, because this is a very common mistake oil printers, especially beginning oil printers, will make. So you see my little pad over there, I just take that excess ink off, and there it is. Look at those video skills. My little red circle, just showing you that should not be there. I do a proper one of these at the end, don't worry about it. But so you see as the print's coming in, this is sped up, 10 or 15 times. This is probably a 20-minute deal in 2 minutes or less. Now, the thing about it is I can take that spot and I could work it down. I could probably blend it in and make it workable. But, if you have the negative, just do it again. This is a mistake. I brushed too long on the gelatin with the dichromate. So as I go through here, you'll see me laying that. This is the 1903, the dark brown ink. I'm not afraid to use a little more as I go along. Lay it down, lay it down. The sky's staying nice and clear. But this particular print, I want a little darker, and you'll see me do that at another one at the end here. I just wanted to show you. You can kind of see I'm getting rid of that. As I put the brush down or the roller down, you can kind of see that I'm getting rid of some of that, that scraped or scratched area with where the gelatin was scraped away with the brush as I put the dichromates on. Everything else looks great. Everything else is fine. It's just that one area. So in about a minute or a minute and a half, I don't know how long that is, but I kind of show you that. Here's another mistake. So this is a whole plate. This is my rabbit skull and my glass. I'm just dabbing off the excess water there. Right away, right away you can see that mark again. And I did it with this dichromated sheet of paper, gelatin. But you see the rabbit skull coming in. I do a proper one of these as well too at the end. But I want to show you some of the mistakes of what you could run into. That's why it's really important that, and this is on Yupo paper. Look how clean that stuff is, right? There's none of this pictorial stuff. It looks more like a photograph. And again, this is the brown ink, so I'm not getting those super high contrasts. You'll see at the end what I do here. But so, okay, so those were a couple of mistakes. I'm going to do a portrait here. This is a portrait to the wet collodion negative. This is a whole plate that I did of a young woman that was here for a workshop. Nikki is her name. And you can see some mistakes. I can show you a couple of these. A couple of these are already gone, but I can show you some of the, I love doing portraits. You know, my goal with oil printing on the mountain is to do large 16 by 20 portraits and do large oil print portraits. That's probably going to be my next project, because I love how people look in oil print. You see those marks along, let's stop that. You see those marks along there? Again, poor application, Quinn, poor application. I mean, there's some really good areas, and as I finish this, you'll see there's really good areas, but those few, and again, you could probably clean these up if you really wanted to, but if you have the negative, why would you bother, kind of thing. You'll see, I'll get it pretty dark here. Flesh tones are nice. I mean, it's a beautiful portrait of her, but I just, again, those gelatin problems, right? Gelatin problems. But portraits are gorgeous anyway. So there's a few problems, and they're mostly going to show up in the application of your sensitizer. And this one, I think, is this a proper one? I've lost track now. I've been a little bit busy. So yeah, this is a proper one, I think. So notice I didn't speed this up. Notice how slow I'm going. So I kind of want to show you in real time both ways. I'll ink the roller up again. You start seeing the image come in now. There's the image starting to form. The slower you go, the less contrast. The faster and more pressure you go with the more ink, the higher contrast you're going to have. So I just want to work these in. I want to show you how long this actually takes.
Quinn?
Yes, sir.
In your second video, did you go over maybe ways of keeping that abrasion from happening?
Great question. Here's a real simple, quick answer to that. Keep your dichromate wet and apply all the, if in this case it was 6 or 7 milliliters, get it all out there. And once it's all out there, stop brushing and hang your paper up. It's only going to take 30 seconds or so. I think I got talking on these as doing the video. I got talking on them and I lost track, and I just brushed and brushed and brushed and kind of lost track.
Thank you, Quinn.
No stripe. All these defects you see now, don't freak out about them, because it has a way of coming, the images, don't stop until you're finished. It reveals everything. So just be patient with it. Just be patient. And you'll see at the end, this isn't the best. I mean, this is a balanced light, so I don't know why I'm getting a, well, it's not really a weird color. It's more green. The brown, it looks more green here. You'll see. Just be patient, let the print come in. Just let the print come in. Don't freak out about different spots. Don't, you know, those other ones I sped up so you could see the end, but this is real time all the way through. I think I'm going to ink up again here. I can see down below there in the foreground that I'm starting to take on density. I'm doing this in a way to keep it a little more flat, but at the end you'll see I want to vignette this. I want it dark. I want it like very much like a traditional bromoil print would look as you see those. Very pictorialist, very painterly like. I don't know any other way to describe it, but here we go. Now we're pulling in all this detail. I'm going to start working on the tree on the right here. The foreground's looking great. We're snapping up that contrast. Sorry about the table, but I'm putting a little gun to it here. Coming in. Now I have that burst of light behind in the background. Watch what I do with the brush here. I'm going to take the brush here in just a second. I'm going to work on that right side just a little bit. I take the brush here and I start cleaning that up. I'm going to take that sky that's really foreboding. The foreground looks wonderful. Probably doesn't look, you know, this isn't that great quality of a video because my download times, these files are already 2 or 3 gigs by the time I'm done with them. So now I'm trying to pull in more contrast, lay a lot of ink down, Rolling out, I'm taking ink off the roller now. Watch the sky jump up. Watch me take ink away from that. Oh, that's the light on the right side. That's what the light, my light over there is shining down on that right side. That's why. You'll see it here at the end though. When it gets in the shadow, it looks really good. So this is kind of what I call my Tim Burton kind of look and feel, kind of foreboding, dark. It's kind of what you'd, like I said, what you typically see, a bromoil look like, or, you know, oil prints, the old. So here I'm pouncing, or what's called pouncing. I'm taking ink away from the sky back there. You'll see it lighten up a little bit. I'm just taking ink off the print with the brush. Then I'm going to add a little ink to the brush. So as I take the ink off, I take it over to the paper towel and make sure that the ink comes off. A little bit in the foreground there, just for those bones and trees down there. But my big concern is just taking that out of the sky back there. And I worked this for a little while longer. I don't know if I show it. I did. I took a little ink there. And I'm going to darken this tree up just a little bit. Darken those shadow areas up just a little bit. And you're going to take ink and you can move it around. You can work these as long as you want. I normally stop right here, let it dry, and then come back and swell it again and put a little black on it. That's normally what I do. I think I did this one that way. Yeah, I did. So there it is. So you get this very foreboding kind of, see how bright, that's just laying on my mat over there, but you see that kind of foreboding look to it. That's typical classic kind of oil printing stuff. Here we go with the skull and the oak gall and the glass. I sped this one up because it is, we already kind of walked through a normal one, but you see how long, and I'm doing them fast. And that could be just the first step, right? That could just be your brown application, let it dry, swell it again, and do a black or a darker application or whatever you want to do. I do have some pretty direct light shining on these. I go in with the brush here, and I do take that skull down. There's some real highlights on the skull portion, yeah. So I'm taking ink away from the gall and the skull there. Same thing, a little bit on the glass. Now I'm just cleaning up these marks. Those are just gelatin marks again. clean them up, take your time. There you go. You can see a little of it. It's still raised on that one. I didn't apply any black on this. So you get the idea there. I can't really show you how to apply. I can't tell you the pressure. I can talk about the tools. I can talk about the inks. I can talk about the process of going through that. But really, this is something you just have to do, because your experience, actually doing it will tell you what works and what doesn't. And again, what kind of image do you want to have at the end of the day? What kind of look and feel do you want? I've been experimenting, and I haven't decided yet, but it's probably, this series is probably going to look more like that no trespassing tree shot you just saw, more than kind of the straight photograph. I love this Rawlins oil process because it's so pictorialist, right? It's so peach looking, right? You know, one of my influences you saw in my little artist statement the other day, Henry Peach, you know, they're extreme. You can go from almost like a pointillist kind of abstract, bright light and dark, very, very almost, you know, obscured images in that look and feel, to more something in the middle, like that not the skull, but the tree shot that I just did. Michelle, can you use a glass rod with dichromate to avoid brush marks? You could, but then again, you can also get, I have a puddle pusher, I have a glass rod. You can also get, what it is, it's the gelatin. Leaving, the dichromate has water, dichromate, and acetone in it. And the acetone is to help evaporate everything out. But the water, the warmer your water is, and the longer you have it on as you're sensitizing the gelatin, that's where you're going to run into the risk of scarring, starting to swell the gelatin, soften the gelatin, right? Because this is a dried gelatinized piece of paper. Pour that dichromate out, brush it on, do a few times. And I say around 30 seconds or even less if you can do that. As long as you have that, in this case it was 6 or 7 milliliters, as long as you have that dichromate onto the print and it's soaked in just a little bit, you don't have to worry about brush strokes. That was just me running my mouth like I do and doing the demonstration. But it was great because then I got to show you guys, and it's a common thing. I've had people say, what's this? There was no dark slide. This is not on my negative, because they all look like dark slides on a tintype or an ambrotype, right? Where your plate holder scuffs up, or your dark slide scuffs up your emulsion or your collodion on your plate, and they look just like that. And it's because you spent too much time running your mouth or thinking you're going to get all that dichromate in there, when it's really 15, 20 seconds, especially on a print this size, right? Dump it out, get it on there, and hang that puppy up. And I don't have any problems. I just resensitized a couple of pieces, and you saw that I did that again. So, but you can use that.
Quinn?
Yes, sir.
On your second soaking, have you set your lights already, or can you bring some of the blacks out of it? You know what I'm saying? If you've got certain amount of dark you put in there and then you've dried it and then re-soaked it, are the lights there?
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's a great question, Doug. So let's say I take, and I didn't do it on the skull shot, I did it on the tree shot. Let's say I dry that down again, right? I dry that down, and then it's all brown. It's the only thing I used on brown at that point. Then I put it back in the water. I swell the gelatin again. So now the highlights are swollen, the shadows are flat, and the shadows are inked, and the highlights are white. I go back on my board. I take my 1796 or my black lithograph or a combination of colors or something darker. I can go in and just apply that to those shadow areas, and the white stays white. You're never going to apply any ink to those highlights. The midtones and the shadow areas you will, because the gelatin starts to harden all the way down to where your void areas on your negatives are, and where the absolute darkest part, where the glass, if it's just pure glass and your light went through, that gelatin is going to take on any ink you put on that. the highlights are always going to repel no matter what color you do. So you can go back in and put a red layer on, a black layer on, another brown layer. You can keep going. And I mentioned a while ago, which is really cool, and I just read this in one of those old books the other day. You dry the gelatin down, like I just applied the brown ink on that rabbit skull shot. Put a thick layer of that brown ink in it, clear the highlights out of it, let the gelatin dry down. The ink's still not going to be dry. The ink on that will probably take a week to dry, something like that. I mean, in Colorado, maybe 3 or 4 days. But the gelatin will dry in a day. So the next day you have this flat print. The gelatin's all dried down, but it's wet ink on it. Now you can take that print and lay it against another piece of paper and roll it through a press and do a transfer. So there's a whole bunch. It's so cool. So many things you can do with this. Michelle asked, does the print get darker as it dries? Yes. Let me say, it depends on what ink you use. Some of them actually get lighter. And the black, the 1793, the lithograph black, that's why most of the time, if it's a keeper print for me, I'll put a light coat of that on, one at the very end. And that brings everything dries down, your browns jump and your blacks give you the contrast, and they do dry you get good contrast at the end of the day, yes. And especially if you've got the white papers, like I said, the Yupo, the plastic paper, you roll that stuff out. They look like straight photographs. You take the arches or the Hannah Mule or the fine art paper, the watercolor paper, and they give more of a pictorialist look. So the substrate, how you've applied the ink, obviously the negative and what you have in there, and the way you apply the ink, and the color ink, or all those combinations are going to give you all those variables. If you think printing silver chloride prints like collodion chloride or albumin or salt and toning and all these options we have in that, this has 100 more options because you're in complete control. You can take things out. You remove the gelatin and you can take objects out of your image. You can add ink. You can take ink away. I never worry about little pieces of stuff on the gelatin. I usually let that stuff dry and then pick it off, swell it, and roll it again if I need to. So there's so many options with these oil prints. They're really amazing. I mean, and the more you play with them, I've only played with them a few years. The more you play with them, the more I got into this because I got into the Rawlins oil printing because of my ghost dance work. And I knew, although the pot prints on these look great in real life, they look great. I knew I wanted something a little more poetic. I wanted something a little more than a straight photograph to communicate the ideas of these massacre sites. And I say in my book, it's like you go out to these landscape sites where these massacres happen and it's just flat land with nothing, maybe a tree here or this or that. What do you do? How do you manage that visually, right? How do you, and I'm not trying to trick anybody into anything, but I want to make an interesting, powerful, emotional image. And when you're on those places, you feel it. But how do I, translate that? A straight photograph, go out there with a digital camera or a film camera or even wet collodion, a straight photograph doesn't quite give me that mood. So a few years ago, I started looking into Rawlins oil printing, and I started doing some tests and playing around. And I think I showed you the grandma photo and some other things. I did a big Barcelona plate that I have over here. I started messing around with gelatin and ink. And I thought, yeah, I feel good about this. And I was a couple of years away from even completing the work. So now the upside of the coronavirus for me is that it's given me time. I'll probably get this whole series done in the next month and have a nice series of moody, interesting images that have a great story to go along with them. I'm only going to do 20 of them. So, but yeah, great process. I encourage, it's inexpensive. It's easy to do up to the inking portion. And then the inking portion is just your own way of handling. It's like opening a file in Photoshop and saying, what do you want to do? well, what tools do what and how, that kind of thing. So this is really the ultimate manipulation of images for the 19th century for sure. But so everything's easy up to that point. It'll take you some practice inking to get what you want. It'll take you a little practice exposing. It'll take you a little practice, keeping your water temperatures right and your times right and all that. But this is probably the simplest process you can work in. There's no silver gelatin. It's very inexpensive. It's a little bit time consuming, but what isn't, if it's worth the time, what isn't, time consuming is, no big deal, right? I have a hair on me there. So that's what I had. That's it. Compare contrast carbon versus oil. That's a great question, Doug. If you have a high contrast negative and you sensitize your tissues properly, you can make carbon prints. You can have that tissue black as black and your white as white. The difference being with oil, you're going maybe for a mood. So you can punch in as much contrast as you want on these. Mine aren't as contrasty. Well, I think I've shown you guys this several times already. If I have it here, I think I do. Completed print, but this is as contrasty as I want the prints. That's as contrasty as I want them. So you can go as contrasty or not as you want. This is the brown with one layer of black, and I pounced in the edges with my brush with some black, and that's as contrasty as I want them for me. But the world is your oyster. You can go, and John knows this, John and Christine knows this, you can go take that 1793 and take a high contrast negative, roll it, you'll have black ink and white paper. I mean, you can go as high contrast as you want. The black really increases contrast. I don't use 1793, that pure black, on much of nothing straight that so far that I've done. I use it to go over and punch in the shadow areas a little bit. That's all I've ever really used that for, because it is so, I mean, man, it is so contrasty. The old literature talks about a good oil printer can take a thin negative or a dense negative, and through the techniques of inking it up, pouncing and rolling, mostly pouncing at that point, or using your wedge step brush, you can make even a weak negative look good in an oil print, or a super dense negative look good in an oil print. It's all about that ink table. It's all about rolling that ink out, but it's a lot of fun too. So cheers, coffee. What do we have, guys? What do we have? Anything we want to address there? That's really all I had for the oil printing. Jump in. If you have questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them at this point. And remember, you can melt the gelatin after the print too. You can do all kinds of funky encaustic type stuff, and you really transcend photography here in a lot of ways. You move in, well, already you're in pigment print, so you don't have any silver nitrate, right? You don't have any silver. You have gelatin and ink, so you're not making photographs, you're making prints. And then you can step off of that and even go in to transcending to, I know I just have them here, so I'm going to show this to you again. But you can go into the melting gelatin, and let me give you a good example so you have a reference point here. Let me show you. So here's that stationary pot print we did, right? Let's see. Here's that stationary pot print, and here it is as a melted gelatin oil print. I mean, come on, you can't get any wider in difference there. Melted gelatin and collodion chloride.
How are you damaging that gelatin layer, Quinn? How many techniques have you tried?
Hot water. I did hot water, and I also used my hot press to melt a little bit too. I've tried both of them. I like the hot water the best. Dripping hot water. That's why I kept this one. Dripping hot water and melting certain areas of the image. I really love it. But so, and if you're not into transcending and trying those things, I do it because, again, a lot of times on this ghost dance work, it's been very difficult. You give me an interesting looking person, you give me an interesting scene or an interesting object or something like that, I can make an interesting photograph. I think if it's got a good story with it and I can tell the story, give a little narrative with it, I can make the image interesting to look at. What I have to do here, dealing with massacre sites and objects from the massacre site and materials from the massacre sites, I have to tie those stories in. So I have to visually tell, semiotically, semantics, words, semiotics, visuals. I have to semiotically tell the story through the images. And I want the images to pull people in. I want them to be interesting looking. What's going on there? What is that? And then tell the little narrative, the little story about it. So I've been exploring and playing with ideas. I even got into, I was trying all kinds of stuff. I've got all kinds of colors of ink. I was messing with this kind of blood red ink that I have, and that's still not out of the equation. I'm still experimenting, but I think for right now, I'm going to go with my Tim Burton kind of look and feel for that look and feel. Yes, Michelle, hold on. Let me grab those. I'm going to show you guys these. They're on my inking table over here, so I need to grab them. God, it smells so good over here. I love the smell of ink in the morning. It smells super good. If you like the smell of ink. I love the smell of ink. I love the smell. I really do. And I just got some nice brown on me here, yellow. So yes, the question is, there other inks that you can buy? I would say, just to be stay standard when you're first starting out with this, so you have some good results. I would say you stay with your graphic, chemical, and ink 1903 or 1796, or 1796 black, whatever the black number is, I can't remember, lithographic ink. And if you like, I would probably get a pound of both or a tube of both when you start out. So you can ink with, roll with the brown and then either pounce or roll again with the black for contrast. That's kind of how I've done it. But here's the red that I was telling you about. This is the Hanco ink, and this is, or Hanco ink. This is in Elk Grove, Illinois, Hanco ink. This is red litho ink, and it is blood red. It is super blood red. I also got some brown, Bismarck brown from them. And that's what, and then I just had this on my hand, this yellow. And this is a little deceiving. This yellow is a lot lighter on the print. It'll give you, I can almost do like a gum bichromate, a series of colors as these pick up. I started mixing them, but I do like the red. I do like this a lot, and I like the little bit of the yellow. But I've done brown, the graphic chemical ink, and the 1903 brown, and this red, dry down and roll over a light color, and I love it. It's very blood red. It's very, and that's what I was kind of playing with, the idea of blood, the idea of, you know, that's the colors like that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of options. You can use any lithographic ink you find. And why is it lithographic? It's an oil-based ink, and that the water and oil, the separation, that's really important for these to work right. The swelled gelatin and the hardened unswelled gelatin, that this takes on the ink, this doesn't. That's really important. That's a whole concept of the Rawlins oil printing process. So, oh, good. You got the red, blue. Oh, you're good. You got brown, red, blue, and green. John and Christine just said they got the some graphic chemical ink colors. You guys are going to have fun. You can do really, you can get crazy too. The first time I did it, it was like, God, I did straight red, and it was like, oh my God, that's a little too much, you know. So you have to kind of tone it down a little bit and play with it. But I think if you're patient enough between drying and swelling and applying, drying and swelling and applying, you can come up with a really good recipe of making very interesting, context appropriate colors for your images, I think. Again, I go back to this idea that one of my words is memory in my work. And I love the warmer colors, the invoking antique, or something that's happened in the past, or, you know, an old thing, that kind of thing. And that color, the warm yellows and reds, really give me that ability to do that. The cooler colors, you know, the neutral, the grays and the blues and those kinds of things, they're appropriate for the right kind of image, right? They really don't play into my work. That's why I've always leaned toward gold tone print, silver chloride prints, and ambrotypes or tin types fixed in potassium cyanide, warmer color, you know, that kind of thing. I don't put any saltpeter in my developer, making positives. You know, you can brighten that up. You can add a little nitric acid to your silver bath and cool off the images. There's all kinds of tricks you can do to accomplish a certain look and feel. The problem is you need to know what kind of look and feel you're after. And that's where a lot of people don't know what they're after. So they don't have this, the idea of what route to take. And then when you have an idea of what you want, then you have to experiment. And that's really, really a fun journey, right? To experiment on how to get there and what's the best way to get there. Then you consider archivability if you're selling prints or if you're publishing, or, you know, there's all kinds of things you need to take into consideration as you move through. But the journey's the fun part, right? Well, when you get to the destination, all the fun is over because the journey's over. Now what do you do next? And that's another thing I didn't really talk about in my presentation. I did a presentation on Sunday, and it's on YouTube if you guys want to watch it. And if you were there, thank you very much. I appreciate that. But I didn't talk about this. Happened in graduate school a lot to me. I'd work on a small project, or I'd work on a piece of a project, and photographically, or I'd work on a chapter or something in my thesis, or some small projects, or actually it was accumulation of that, but it was actually the portraits of Madison Avenue when I finished that project, because I worked on it for years and I loved it, and it was powerful to me, and I thought it said everything that I needed to say. And when that project came to an end, right as I was graduating from my MFA, that project came to an end, and it was like, wow, what do I do next? You know, what do I do now? And if you've ever been on a journey for a very long time and you've concentrated and really studied and consumed material related and unrelated to your interests, and trying to figure out, you know, how to present and how to make work in whatever medium you're working in, and you've really devoted yourself for a long time. For me, that was many years. That was several years. And then it ends. The journey's over, right? I got my degree, my project's finished, I've shown it, I've exhibited, I've published a book, it's over. Now what do I do? You know, and I found that I decompressed and kind of went into a little bit of the best word I can use is kind of a depression, an artistic depression. I felt empty. I didn't know everything I thought of seemed corny and contrived, and like, oh, you're just trying to do, you know, everything in your head gets a little muddy and mucky, and nothing sounds right. And I realized quickly that after a couple of months of that, I was reading Daniel Goldhagen's book, The Willing Executioners. It's a great book about the Holocaust. And I was living in Germany, and it was like, Kristallnacht, that's what I'm going to do. So I started doing research on all the synagogues that were destroyed in Germany and Austria. And man, there were thousands of them. So I said, I'm going to do a project on Kristallnacht. November 9th and 10th, 1938. Nazis burned down all the synagogues, broke all the glass, burned all the Torahs, all the material from the synagogues, started rounding up Jewish folks, and that, you know, it seemed obvious to everyone else other than me, but that turned into that project that I called Vergangenheitsbewältigung. And then those two pieces came together in 2010. I worked on that for 4 years. Those two projects, Portraits of Madison Avenue and Vergangenheitsbewältigung, came together in 2010 at the Santori Gallery in Paris. and I showed 88 pieces there. And a lot of those were diptychs and triptychs. So I had over 100 plates in that show of that work, both bodies of work called Glass Memories. And then after that, 2011, I moved back to the States. So that was an easy thing for me. I moved to Denver here, and I wanted to take a look at my old stomping ground of the Western United States and people living out here. And so I started that portrait project that I really based on Richard Avedon's work, the American West portraits, and looking at characters that way. So my point is there's always that next project. So enjoy the journey, whether it's technical or philosophical or conceptual. Don't get in too big of a rush to get to the end. Make sure everything's right for you, whether it's a look and feel on a print or whether it's a concept in a project. I think it's really important that people enjoy that journey and that process, because that's really what it is. That's what's either going to make you or break you, whether it's the print or the concept or both in combination, to make sure you're being authentic, that you're being real with yourself. And once you get one project under your belt, your personal fine art project, something that you're concerned with, not a commercial project or something you're trying to make money on, or a story, a journalist story or whatever, nothing wrong with those. I'm just saying your personal work. Once you get to the end of a work, especially if you work several months or several years on it, you're going to come up to this wall and you're going to say, what's next? Or is there a next? You know, oftentimes I thought, I don't know if there's a next, right? I don't answer that much anymore. I just told you that if I get to the mountain and everything sets up properly, I want to do these big 16 by 20, 40 by 50 centimeter portraits, negatives in my big camera, and do big oil prints and do portraits of people, oil prints of people. And the first thing I'd probably wind up doing is I'll probably pull in blacksmiths and bladesmiths and do portraits of working people or occupations that have gone away, or old occupations. You know, find me an ice hauler and a blacksmith and a dairy farmer. You know, dairy farmers are still there, but that kind of stuff. Yeah, and don't be afraid to take a detour or two on that's absolutely right, Peter. That's so true. In fact, those detours are going to get you to your destination. It's not one straight line. It's a whole bunch of, one thing I did learn I'd learned a lot of things in graduate school, but one thing I did learn in graduate school is that things you think are not relevant to your work or what you're interested in are very relevant. I mean, I watched movies, I read books, on all kinds of different topics, right? From philosophy, psychology, fiction, basket weaving, painting. I mean, everything kind of can inform you or give you ideas. So those detours are a must. And yeah, it's not one straight line, that's for sure. There's a lot of curves and a lot of unexpected things. I was looking at my my thesis the other day, my graduate thesis. It's right here. Not that. This is my graduate thesis. And in the back of it, I have all my citations. It's an annotated bibliography. It's probably 30 or 40, 30 pages, I would imagine. Annotated bibliography. And as I look through the resources of what I used to do that work with, it's amazing. I mean, some of the stuff I want to revisit, actually. I mean, it's not, you know, The Science of Physiognomy. How about that? A book called The Science of Physiognomy. I just opened it and read one. So that gives you an idea. The path is a winding, diverse path to a true and honest project from yourself. And I think a lot of photographers think that there's nothing wrong with emulating somebody's work, right? If you like Ansel Adams, or you like, you know, Robert Mapplethorpe, or if you like, you know, whoever it is, it doesn't matter. There's nothing wrong with being influenced. Influence is incessant, and we're all working under that, right? But there's a whole different line of thought of trying to copy them, right? Copy that kind of the idea of making landscapes in this fashion. And well, what's the work about? Well, it's like Ansel Adams, or What's that portrait about? Well, it's like Robert Mapplethorpe. And you want to delve in and you want to say, well, what do you mean it's like that? It's aesthetic. It might be aesthetically like that. It might look like that work, but what is it? What is the work for you about? And people tend to, a lot of times, forget the portion of being able to talk about their work, have words and ideas inform and support their work, not take over their work, but support their work. And that's a big difference between the artsy fartsy stuff, the conceptual stuff that rises above. It's just really BS and artsy fartsy talk, versus having those concepts support the work and hold it up and inform people about what it is in a real authentic way. And then the other portion is where the work doesn't have a concept and it's just supposed to float out there on its own without the creator, the maker of the work talking about it. And I always say that I refuse to do people's intellectual work. I don't want to look at photographs that if the creator doesn't know what they're about, I surely don't know what they're about. I mean, if you just want me to walk up and look at them for beauty or hanging them over my couch because it reminds me of my childhood lake that I visited and went boating on, that's one thing. But if you're making work that has a narrative or a story to it, I want to hear about the story or the narrative and then look at the work kind of thing and see how I feel. And, a lot of times, a lot of them don't work for me. And a lot of times my work doesn't work for people. It depends on what point in journey in life you're in and what you've experienced and what you think about and what you feel is important. And that's all I ask artists and people working in photography to do, is consider making work that's meaningful to you other than getting $1 in your wallet. Nothing wrong with that. But consider making work that's important to you on a personal level and see if it connects with other artists and other human beings and other cultures, and give it a chance. Man, everybody has, we're all on here on this spinning little ball out in wherever we're at, and everybody has their opportunity to say or talk about the things they find interesting or have questions about. Really, that's all my work is I'm just questioning things. That's all it is. I surely don't have any answers, or if I do have any answers, they're only answers in the context of maybe asking more questions, right? I mean, they're not, I don't have the market on anything. All I'm saying in my work is, why do we marginalize some communities? Why do we do this to some human beings? Why do we treat people in a certain way because of this, that, or the other? That's all I'm ever asking. And your work doesn't have to tackle those kinds of things. Your work can tackle beauty. Your work can tackle, expanse and other concepts and other things. It doesn't have to deal with, you don't have to pick those kind of social topics. You have to pick something or some, you don't even pick it. You have to find what's inside of your heart and your head and then explore. That's the problem most people find, is they don't have the tools, or they're not even equipped to find out what it is they're interested in, because we live in a culture that really does not support that. We really don't live in a Socratic self-examination, my relationship to the world kind of culture. We live on a very superficial, monetary, popularity, what's famous, how do I look good, how do I appear to be this way or that way. So these things are not superficial. They're the opposite of that. So, and that's what a lot of folks struggle with. They struggle with, how do I get past this barrier of, I don't even know what I'm interested in. And it's great to admit that. It's great to have dialogue and discourse and say, I don't even know what I'm interested in, and start a conversation like in these groups and have conversations about that. And all of a sudden, you're going to have an epiphany one day, right? You're going to have a eureka moment. And you say, oh my God, you're going to get a little touch of something. You're going to start scratching at that and digging, and this whole thing's going to open up. And next thing you know, you're on a journey, writing and talking and looking and studying and making photographs or painting or sculpting or whatever you're doing, making music, whatever you're doing, you'll go down that road. And that's, to me, that's what a true artist is not a famous, wealthy person with a lot of accolades. It's a person who's discovered their purpose in life, not of life. Nobody knows what the purpose of life is, but we can find meaning and purpose in our lives. And I think that's very true.
Quinn, can I ask, I hate to, I love your philosophy, so I don't want
Thank
to, but I
you.
would kind of want to go back into the technical part just for a second.
Please, and yeah, absolutely.
Before, I'm trying to get my head wrapped around a little bit. If you do that, the gelatin, like unlike carbon, is not, the soft gelatin is not washed away. So could it be damaged by humidity if it tries to swell again, let's say in a humid area, especially if you have a porous piece of material like a watercolor paper or whatever? And
Right.
then the second question is, can you use glass?
Very great questions. Wonderful questions. Number one, gelatin is hydrolyzed collagen or animal parts, right? So they're broken down. So when they're the powder, if you will, the dry form of it, if you will, when it's introduced to water, it swells. Your great question on humidity. You would have to have 100% humidity for quite some time to swell gelatin. You'll take, and you know this, you've worked in carbon, Doug, you know this, that gelatin takes a while to swell. I mean, direct application of water, you're going to swell it in a minute or two, or start to swell it. You won't see any relief for several minutes. But the short answer to your question is no, you don't really have to worry about that. And you're correct. The gelatin in Rawlins oil prints do not wash away like carbon, right? We do not do that. So it stays, it's just dichromated, it's not hit with light, so it still has the ability to swell. The parts that hit with light are hardened and do not swell and take ink on. These repel ink, these take ink on, the oil and water concept. The second part is a wonderful question, and I love it. I've done carbon on glass, which is, I love carbon on glass. And it's interesting you say this. I think it's interesting you ask this. I was thinking this morning, one of my next videos, I'm going to do an oil print on glass. I'm going to do this process on glass, and I'll show it to you. I'll show you. And that's a great thing. And that's just fun. Why am I doing it? It has nothing to do with my project. I did carbon on glass, and it's absolutely stunning and beautiful. And you can do oil on glass as well too. But I haven't done it. So thank you for that, Doug. That's a great question. I appreciate that. And I will do that. If people are interested, we can do one of those. And it's the same thing, right? Stripping out. I mean, you can't use magnetic strip. I bet you I can use my magnetic strips because I got that Jason Lane glass, that dry plate glass. It's 1 millimeter thick. And I bet you my magnetic strips will pull through. So, but even if you can't, you can lay them down and hold it, tape them in place and pour your gelatin out, let it sit up and then remove it off the glass. I will do, let's do that. I'll do that. I was thinking about that this morning because that's fun. It's really safe to use silver gelatin negative to do it. Is there any contamination issue that can damage it like some other process? Michelle, I'm not sure what the question is. Is it really safe? Silver gelatin. Oh, yes. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes. You can use, yes, you can, yes, no damage. What he's asking is, once you have the paper, the gelatin on the paper, you dichromated it, it's dried, and now it's sensitive. He's asking, is it safe to put a silver gelatin negative on there? And yes, it is. It's very safe. You will not damage it. I've done several of them. I mean, you will not damage it at all. There's nothing wet. There's nothing in an off gas. It's dried dichromated gelatin, and you can put plastic film on it, digital negatives, glass, whatever. You won't damage it. And the heat, the only thing you'd have to maybe worry about is, and you never want to put them directly in the sun anyway, but a heat source heating that gelatin up to the point where it gets sticky and high humidity, like Doug says. That combination, you could have some problems with, but no, you'd have to be 100 degrees, you'd have to be 45 degrees Celsius and 100% humidity. So no problem using silver gelatin negatives. In fact, I encourage people that aren't working in the wet collodion process, but are interested in some of these printing out processes or these pigment print processes that we're doing now, to start with a 4x5, T-Max, a silver gelatin negative. and flow you some paper, dichromate it, put your negative down, and try some prints that way. Great way to do it. The oil print, once you get it down, like the old literature says, about any negative will work. If you're good enough in the inking process, inking it up, about any of the negatives will work. I prefer a little more dense negative. I like the wet collodion negative. I like the 1.6, 1.7, 1.8 max density in the negative. I like to pour my oil thick. I get better release. So, man, there's sometimes I can take my swollen print out and I lay it down, dab off the water, and the first couple of rolls, the image is just there. My relief is so extreme and so thick. And that's partially due to the negative and partially due to the density of the oil. You saw I used 25, 28 mils of oil on a 6 by 15 centimeter square area. That's quite a bit of oil. That's an 8%. That's quite thick. Because you'll read literature where they're down to 3%. They do it twice. They'll do 2 dunks as 3% oil gelatin. Forgive me, I'm always saying oil when I mean gelatin. They'll do 2 or 3, a couple of dunks in 3% gelatin, and then a full submersion in dichromate and stuff like that. I like, and you know, it's your call. I like to do it this way. This is how I've had good results. This is what I like to, my practice. This is the journey I'm on, let's say. So those are good questions though. Yeah, use your film negatives for sure. Or digital too. Digital negatives are great. You can get the curves on them. I've seen a couple of guys tune in digital negatives, and I don't know anything about them really, but I know they get the curves just right for oil prints on them, and just like any other process, and they nail them. I can tell you right now, if I sit down with a piece of arches or a piece of even Yupo, it doesn't matter, but more of the artistic stuff for me, more of the watercolor stuff, arches or Hahnemühle paper, and I pour my 8% gelatin on a piece of paper, and I dichromate it 50-50, 10% dichromate diluted down 50% for a 5% dichromate, and I take any of my ghost dance work. I can do 10 or 11 minutes on my Ryonet every single time, and they're spot on every single time. Roll them out every single time, they work. So you'll get a system down. And I encourage people not to wander too much in the beginning, just like anything else, right? If you're just starting out pouring plates in wet collodion or trying another process, do the standard. Follow the standard for a while until you have some results. I can guarantee if you go back and watch these videos and you follow this, you will have a result the first time you do this. You will have a result because it's foolproof. You can check your negative for exposure, and once you see the highlights and just details in the highlights, you can stop printing out. You can stop your exposure. Remove the dichromate from that, even if you don't have EDTA or sulfides or anything. Just use water. Pull the dichromates out of that print. You can dry it up right there. Next day, swell it up again, or you can take it right from your clearing bath and put it on your inking table, take you some lithographic ink and start rolling it out. I mean, you can do it. Yeah, and I've tried to adjust digital curve in Photoshop in advanced black and white settings. Works really great. There you go. Yes, you're the one that had a salt print from a digital negative, I think you said, or something. Yeah. So many possibilities. I wouldn't take anything away from working in it. People think I'm this hardcore only wet collodion, just because that's what I work in. I say try everything. You're after it. You're after an aesthetic. Jan's got something for us here. Let's take a look. What do you have there?
What I showed you.
There you go. Let's see that.
It's very difficult to see because I don't have light from behind.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So that's a digital negative.
Yes.
Oh, wow. You could make a great oil print with that.
Yes, I do. And it's like a little yellow in the dark, because then you have better tonality in the negative. And that's why I'm setting in my Epson printer and at advanced mode. Then you can setting the sliders over to yellow, sepia. And then
Perfect.
you get greater tonality from the dark and down to the white.
The range, exactly. John's asking, Jan, are you using regular Epson inks or are you using encapsulated carbon ink replacements?
Yes, this you see here.
There you go. What kind of inks are you using? Are you using the regular Epson inks?
Yes,
Okay.
I use it. Yes, I use. I change. If I have glossy paper, I change to glossy black.
Okay.
Epson.
Boy, that negative looks great. That negative looks really good. I know the image you got that from, so I have some reference. That looks
so
good.
Sharp. It's so sharp and good light from the window.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. You see, there you go. Great, great way to proceed on making, you know, if you have the capability to make digital negatives, why not? There's something for me about.
There is a big difference. I had to have the Berger paper.
Yep.
EOT 320, and there is a yellow tint in it. There's a little color in it, and I scanned it. I take a photo, and I scan it, and I plot in a curve in Photoshop, and I try printing again out the digital film negative. Then it's changed.
Sure.
Yes, there was so many in the middle of the scale. It was gone before, but it's come back. So much more dynamic.
Wow. Very good. Yeah. You practice and you learn, and yeah, absolutely great. That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't remember the name, but there was one guy in YouTube I look at. Very good.
There's so many guys out there. That digital stuff is so advanced and going. I mean, people often say, "Why are you bothering with wet collodion negatives? You can just do digital negatives and get your Epson printer fired up and go for it."
But also, if you have a 5.7 glass, and some people ask you for have some bigger, I want A3, I want A2. Okay, you can print it up.
Yeah. Well, Jan, look in the chat there. John's talking about try printing in green before we switched our inks over. Green was better at blocking UV than black. Interesting. Yep.
Yeah, Jan, print a hue chart and then expose your hue chart. With Canon, we found it was like an orangish red that really blocked the UV, and Canon, it was like a green shade. And it's amazing because black hardly did much because it is what it is. And the green for the Epson and the orangish red for the Canon really did a heck of a better job at blocking UV when you do a hue chart. So you're probably going to get a lot better, a lot better of your density with your inks if you try it, if you haven't tried it yet.
Interesting. Yeah.
Hey, John, question. So you said Canon, right?
Yes, sir.
So I thought UV blocking inks were not actually good for this kind of development for digital negatives when you're doing these kind of contact prints.
Well, the problem is we've tried Canon, we've tried Epson, and honestly, the way to go is that encapsulated carbon, which they call the Piezography. And right now, you can only do that in Epson because you can flush the cartridges out and replace it with all these different carbon inks. We always had issues with the density on a lot of the dichromated processes. Something that doesn't require much, like cyanotype, Christine always had a good work at. But yeah, you're going to get a little bit. And what a lot of people will do is they'll print two digital negatives on transparencies. They'll then line them together, and I've actually seen good work that way as well. But one just doesn't seem to really cut it with the standard inks. Bostic and Sullivan, when I've talked to them, they had said that the Epson pigment inks worked well with the platinum palladium process, which would probably work out well here. But definitely, whatever printer you have, try it first. You can also use laser printer and just wax the paper, which I've had work well as well.
I actually have a Canon Pro 4100. It's a 44-inch wide format printer. So, and I was thinking I'd have to get an Epson to make a digital negative to go large, but I'll try that first though.
Try it. What you want to do is you want to get yourself either the Pictorico, it's actually screen printing
Mhm.
transparencies. But we found another brand. It's called Cisink, Cisinks, and it's for screen printing. And they have them in the big sheets. They're a heck of a lot cheaper than the Pictorico, at the expense of just drying. It takes about 10-15 minutes to dry, but it's got this layer in it that you can lay down a matte. You can take and go into your Canon profile, lay down a matte profile, which puts down so much more ink, and it will grab onto it. But definitely try it. It's a fun journey. It's kind of like carbon. You're going to beat your head against the wall, but it's a fun journey, and you're gonna have some fun with it before you do like we and say, you know what, we want to do. We're even doing silver enlarging papers with this carbon ink. But just try it out. You'll never know what you're going to get unless you try it. But try what you've got first.
So can you spell that again one more time?
Which one? The inks?
Yeah, the Cisinks. Is that what it is?
Cisinks.
Oh, okay, I got it.
And
All right.
we print those. I think it's $1 a sheet, maybe $2 a sheet for the 13 by 19.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
and the carbon inking system is called Piezography, Piezography.
Yep.
And
Okay.
it's a complete ink replacement that is just encapsulated carbon that they have them for several different Epson models. If you need to go that way,
Right.
if you're going to buy an Epson printer, just go that way, because we spent way too much time, money, and effort in trying to make other things work.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Thank you.
And the Piezography system, the really cool thing about that, like Jan was talking about, like Quinn was talking about, once you print something out, you can then take a print calibrator that kind of, one of the ones that kind of you do every single square, and you can
Mhm.
make yourself a hell of a curve. It's unreal.
Nice.
I'm wondering if there's going to come a time where making glass wet collodion negatives is a moot point, because as I see this technology advancing and it's going so fast, it's just improved tremendously from years ago when people were making digital negatives and doing salt prints and albumin prints. They were still very inferior to the actual wet collodion negative, but I feel like they're creeping up very close to where making a large glass wet collodion negative would be maybe almost a moot point if your end goal is just the print itself. Now, if you're working through something, it might be a different thing, right? I mean, there may be some value in the ritual or the ceremony or the authenticity. I know in the gallery world, they wouldn't view that very well. When I was in Paris, I had 2 shows in Paris at the Santori, and I had, well, these behind me, these were large inkjet prints from the digital, the wet collodion images, and they wouldn't even let me put those. We put them in the foyer for advertisement, but they wouldn't allow those in at all. I mean, they're still. I mean, that was several years ago, but there's still some stigma about that, the conceptual part of and the process thereof. So depending on, just like anything, I would imagine. But I'm just wondering if at the end of the day, if there's a time coming in our not too distant future, in the next couple of years, maybe less, where making large glass negatives, wet collodion negatives, if you're only after that print, is kind of a moot point. I mean, I can see that. I won't say that I would never do it. I'm just saying right now, I probably would stick with the authentic wet collodion negative, but I'd be willing to try. If I get on the mountain and I do these 16 by 20 or 40 by 50 centimeter portraits, which I've done a lot of, I've done a lot of those, and make oil prints, and I take and do the same portrait on whole plate and scan that negative in and make an enlarged, negative to put on oil paper or whatever I want, oil prints. It'd be interesting to see. I'm not opposed to that. I'm just saying it depends on your audience, and if you wanted to show, if you're doing commercial work, it wouldn't matter much. But if you wanted to show in a gallery, I think the process of getting there would matter quite a bit to a lot of gallerists. Not all of them. Not all of them. I mean, they'd be open to any of that. But they're interesting questions. Yeah, there's so many great videos out there and YouTube stuff, man. University of YouTube, right? I mean, good God, what can't you find on YouTube, right? My microwave doesn't work. My vacuum stopped. I mean, it's great. I'm saying it's wonderful. I'm not saying. Yeah, so that's all I have, guys. Are we good to go? John, I'm going to send you a new PDF of my stuff from the other day. If you guys have time tonight, 5 p.m. Mountain Standard, I guess it's 7 p.m. Eastern Standard, I'm going to join in on John's camera club there, and we'll see what happens. And kind of do a little presentation or talk about photography again. I never tire of talking about photography. So
I'll be in touch, Quinn. We're gonna have a lot of hopefully a lot of good questions, but you're gonna be talking to people that I've been kind of trying to drill into their heads the thought of visualize the image as you click that button, even though there's a lot of digital. Visualize that image on the wall, and how do you want to project, which I think you're going to be perfect for. Absolutely. Yeah,
and that's great. And it doesn't matter the process. So, I just happen to work in these processes. It doesn't matter if you do digital or film or paint or whatever. The medium to me becomes irrelevant when you talk about the concept or the intention or the context of the work. Why are you making that work? And if you're sculpting, if you're, painting, photography, whatever flavor, it doesn't matter. I think what's important is to have, I think you become better at anything you do if you have context and intention with the work. So we can definitely talk about that. I'll send you a link to that new PDF. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. It was wonderful having you all in. And we'll see you Saturday. I'm going to do an oil print on glass. So thanks, Doug. Ciao. Have a great day. Stay safe, guys.